Hey guys, Mr. Vintage here and welcome back to the shop. If this is the kind of trim you're looking to make for your antique Victorian house, come along with me and follow my DIY and I'll show you how we made this beautiful reproduction, authentic antique Victorian trim for our 1860s farmhouse. So we had to start with getting our rough sawn lumber. We're using cherry. It's the closest we could find to get the color of our antique trim that we received. But you can use whatever species you want. A lot of people would use oak. If you're a real purist, you're going to try to find something that's real similar to kind of the yellow southern pine that they used to use, heart pine that they used to use in a lot of houses. But these are rough sawn boards, so we've got to get them into the shop and turn them into boards we can use. Okay, now that we've got our lumber sized in and not rough cut anymore, we come to the heart of our operation. That is our planer molder machine. You can find a lot of different machines on the used market. Facebook Marketplace is going to be probably your best friend for that. I picked this machine up for $100 from an elderly gentleman who was selling everything, going traveling on the road at 81 years old. Average, I've seen these machines here in the Midwest anywhere between $100 and $1,000. They're all over the board. But don't get discouraged if the tooling and the machines look expensive. Do a little digging around and some research. You can pick up some really good deals. It looks more intimidating than it really is. Believe it or not, all of my machines that I have in my shop, the most I've ever paid for a single machine was $500. On average, I paid between $100 and $350. I bring them home, maybe replace some belts and bearings. I'm off to the races again. This has the distinction of being the newest machine in my shop, made in 1984. The oldest machine, I believe, was made in 1938 or 39. So we got pretty wide spectrum of age of machinery, but it all does the job. Okay, so let's take a look under the hood of our planer molder. Inside you can see my molding knife there in the planer head. Those knives were custom made by Woodmaster in Kansas City. Pretty reasonably priced. They do charge by the inch, hence why I only have the pattern and it does not do a full 6-inch face cut, trying to keep it reasonable. All said, done in total for my house with rosette cutters, different molding profiles, and there were a lot of them. I had about $800 of detooling, but you could be out of it for much less depending on what you're making. With that being said, I kind of cheat when I set my machine up, and I use the original piece as a go, no-go gauge to set the knives, and that's worked pretty well for me. Here's a sample side by side. This is the original board, which is probably over 130 years old. This is the brand new cherry version that I've made. If you can tell the difference between them, you got a better eye than I do, because really the profile is exact. The way that Woodmaster does this, I actually took and cut off a section of this and sent it to them, and they made the molding knives exactly to match the profile of my antique board. Just like that, we're trimming like it's 1869 again. Okay, so the next thing we're going to make is that age-old staple of trim work, quarter round. If you've bought any of the stuff lately, it's insanely expensive. The average quality of what you get from your big box store is garbage, and if you need something quality in maple, cherry, hickory, oak, whatever you're trimming with, it's expensive. Really expensive for what it is. A couple different ways you can make it. You can get a router bit and do it with a router, clamp your work to a hard surface, run along it, buzz it out, cut it off. For what I got right here, I have a Delta shaper machine, and that's what I'm going to use. I think I paid $350 for this machine a number of years ago, and most of what I use it for is making quarter round and trim moldings. So I'll show you this machine and give you a couple pointers, and let's whip out some quarter round. So the Delta shaper has this 3/4 over round shaper on it. This came from Grizzly, very fairly priced. I've got my 1/2-inch spindle in there, which is very common on the lighter duty shapers, so you can use this with a 1/2-inch, or you can take the bushings out and you can use it on a 3/4 spindle machine. But most of the machines that you'll find out there are going to be the 1/2 spindle, so you can use it either way. I'll show you how I do it. However you make the profile, the process is the same for manufacturing it and turning it out, and I'll show you how I do that. So now you can see we've got our 3/4 profile on here. Looking real good. Now we just got to cut it out. Okay. So we've set our saw to 3/4 of an inch between the fence and the blade. We're going to run her through. Just like that. We got a real nice piece of quarter round cherry, and I made it out of my scraps for pretty much pennies on the dollar. So the next thing we're going to make here is our rosettes. I did those about 1 inch thick, so you get a little protrusion above the 3/4 inch trim. Gives it a nice look. Didn't have 1 inch material, so we had to do some glue ups. Nothing crazy there. First thing we have to do with these is kind of go corner to corner, find our center. Now we'll take that over to our rosette cutter on the drill press. So our rosette cutter actually has custom made knives. I got this from a company online called moldingknives.com. Sounds like a scam, but it's totally not. They're up in Canada. They did really nice work. I sent them a rosette, an original, and they cut it in half and custom made the knives. This cutter will do, I think, up to like 3 inches down to like 7/8. It's not inexpensive, but when you want something to look the way it's supposed to, you got to go the long dollar. That being said, you're going to put your work in here, kind of eyeball it to the center of the cutter, and make sure you strap it down to the table because, as you can see, this cutter is kind of violent. You want to go real slow with this, otherwise you get excessive chip out. That being said, it could just be the species of the wood that I'm using, cherry. You can also use this cutter in a lathe and mount the block to a faceplate and then put the cutter in the tailstock and run it into it. So there's a couple different ways you can use it. I've got it on my 1939 Delta drill press. So with that, let's make a rosette. It's probably actually the best one that I've made yet. Pretty happy with that. Very little chip out. And as you can see, zoom me out a little bit, we've got a perfect reproduction of a 1800s rosette, a little different pattern than maybe what you're used to seeing, but this was the trim that I got and I kind of like it. It's different. You don't see it in every old house. Alright, here we are at our favorite part of the project, or at least my favorite part of the project. Everything's stained, cleared, ready to go. These are our boards that we're going to use in this part of the house for trimming around doors and such. Back in the kitchen, my house was a victim of modernization back in the 60s. All the original trim was gone, so this is what was required to replace it. With that being said, I've got my 15 gauge trim nailer. And we're going to start getting stuff lined up and start banging it out. All right, guys. There you have it. That's kind of the DIY of how I, as a regular working guy, was able to make my own Victorian trim for my house, duplicated from original patterns. My house was a victim of modernization in the 1960s. As a result, we lost all the original windows, doors, trim work, and we've been kind of painstakingly getting all that back. We're very lucky to get a lot of 1800s Victorian trim from a house in Hastings that was turned into a duplex. Very gracious gift from one of my cousins. And we have some of that throughout the house, but we had to duplicate more of it to carry the patterns throughout the whole house. And let's take a look around at what we've got. So here on the back door you saw we've got the kind of 3-rib pattern on 6-inch wide boards, 6x6 rosettes. Same pattern over here on my basement door. The kitchen half of the house was a addition probably in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So we decided to go with kind of a simpler trim pattern in the kitchen than the rest of the house. This is the pattern that we'll use in the rest of the house. This is some of the original trim that we got out of the house in Hastings. Our big pocket door, we were lucky enough to get that off our marketplace and paid a paltry $50 for it, and that was a good day. Got our baseboards. Those are almost 9 inches tall. About, yeah, probably 8.5, 9 inches tall. And that's 2 pieces, milled and made. And there you have our kitchen. If you look back at our previous videos, you can see that this kitchen has come a very, very long way. Alright, so there you have it. Thanks for coming along with me, guys. Hope I was able to help you out a little bit. By all means, if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. Appreciate you coming along, and hope to see you back again in the shop real soon. Have a great night.